Welcome to the Social for Brokers podcast. Today, I have with me a guest. If you spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, you'll probably have seen his cigar smoking or whiskey drinking selfies. Of course, if you're watching on YouTube, you'll know it's Dominic Hyatt. So Dominic runs NewsPage, which is the UK's first ever free PR platform, which means as a mortgage advisor, you can get your name into the likes of the Daily Mail, the Daily Telegraph, the Independent, or even make an appearance onto some of the major news outlets. I think I saw one of the people on BBC recently. The exposure is crazy for any mortgage broker out there who wants to get their name out there, and can be amazing for your business. So Dominic today is going to talk us through how you can do exactly that, as his clients have done, and going to give us a few tips on how you can increase the chances of being featured. So Dominic, thank you very much for coming on.
No worries. I wouldn't these days. I mean, it's funny because my background, I was a journalist for many years, and then I ran a PR agency, which I actually still have. But we don't really refer to NewsPages, people on NewsPages clients. They're effectively users. They use our service.
Right.
So, that's just one way of, but it's just, and brokers, we have for some reason or other, I don't know why, but we have just ridiculous levels of brokers, just a serious,
this is
all over the country. And, we kind of, we knew that mortgages was a fluid news space. So we kind of deliberately, went out for certain sectors, which we knew were sort of, there was always news breaking, so property, mortgages, it's consistently, being covered, in all the local, the national media, the trade media. So there was a sort of, some sort of reason to our sort of choosing mortgages as the first sector. But, it's absolutely flown, and, we've got an insane amount of brokers now on NewsPage using it. And it's been great to see, 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, you had 5 or 6 of the same old brokers, being wheeled out, the rent-a-gobs, and now you've got brokers who can't afford to spend $5,000 a month on PR, who are getting just as much coverage for sweet FA, or next to nothing a month. So
for people that it's massive, and we'll get through into some success stories as well shortly. But can you talk us through exactly what it is? If a broker was to log onto your website, what can they do, and how can it benefit them?
Yeah, well, the main way that most brokers use NewsPage is you create a news page just like you do a LinkedIn page or a Facebook page. You then add your details, so your name and a picture of yourself and blah, 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 your position and company. What's crucial is that you then add areas of expertise. So if you're a mortgage broker, you're going to add mortgages, property market, maybe protection insurance, things like this. You will then start receiving on email news alerts. So basically emails saying, hey, the Times are writing an article about, HSBC cutting its rates by X%, what are your views? You can then respond, via your laptop or wherever you are on your mobile. And then the Times journalist, an hour later, you could be on the Times. It's really that simple. That's how most people use it. It's kind of throughout the day, they will receive, countless emails, and some come from the NewsPage editorial team. So we often spot a lot of stories, but equally we have journalists. We've got about 300 journalists now. Most of the sort of, the Times and Sunday Times, they regularly use us, the Daily Mail, iNews, the Independent. We have journalists across, all the trades and all the nationals now using NewsPage to come to us for, just to get views from brokers and what's happening. And they love the fact, I think this is an important point to make, that our brokers tend to be quite outspoken. They're not, polished corporate entities. They say it as it is. And that to a journalist is very appealing. Having someone say it is, because they're not having to tiptoe around shareholders or a board, really helps them cut through in the media and make waves. So, we have a lot of brokers who aren't, afraid to say, exactly as things are. So,
And that's the great thing. You've got such a cross section. And for people listening, if I throw some of the names out there that they'll recognise, you've got like Kylie Ann at CAG Financial. She gets featured through Newspage.
Yeah,
You've got the guys at Rebus, Lee and Nizam. They get featured.
they sent
Um,
me a cigar the other day, which is very kind of
that was
them.
very
I
nice of
think
them, wasn't it? Yeah.
yeah, I think they only joined about 3 months ago, but I think they had a quick roll, because what we do is we do, when someone's new to Newspage, we will go out of our way to make sure they get coverage. We can do, I'm not going to explain how it all works. That would take forever, but we can do certain things and pull certain levers. To sort of, just to show people the potential of Newspage. And it's always satisfying to take someone who's perhaps never been in their local newspaper and dump them on the Daily Mail about an hour later, or into the Financial Times, or, I think you mentioned Kylie Ann. I think she was on the One Show, and that was sort of indirectly through the coverage that was generated through Newspage, as far as I'm aware. But
And we'll get into the TV appearances because I think that's incredible that it's off the back of what you're offering. But when you spoke about you've got brokers that are quite outspoken, a perfect example of this is Gareth from South Coast Mortgages. He's one of our clients. He wrote an article, I think it was last year, about mortgage rates and how they were going up, and almost like the grim reaper of mortgage rates. And yes, that comment on that article on that alert wouldn't have fit maybe in the Daily Mail or the Telegraph, but it was picked up by the likes of Lad Bible. Now, people might think Lad Bible, look, it's not a huge. It was maybe picked up on an article that was picked up by Lad Bible. It's maybe not a huge outlet of media, but it gets him front of mind, and it's almost like his friends were messaging him saying, "I've seen your name on Lad Bible." That's where those outspoken brokers can really make a difference.
Exactly. I mean, the media, when we send out, when brokers respond, if it's a big story, and that presumably was probably a big story, we often send it to general news desks, so general news reporters. So not just the personal finance and the mortgage journalists. If it's a big story like the Bank of England have just, increased the base rate or left it on hold, we will send those comments to all journalists, pretty much, political journalists, general news journalists. And that's how you can end up suddenly, one of these journalists could be freelancing for Lad Bible, or, it's a very strange world, the media, but very quickly you can end up, in places that you wouldn't imagine. So, yeah.
It's huge for people at the moment, and it's growing by the day. So tell us a bit about your background, Dominic, and how you got into this. And why you started NewsPage.
I was a journalist for about eight or so years. Started at the Investors Chronicle, so a sort of financial journalist, sort of freelance for various papers. So my background was in sort of investing, finance, sort of property, mortgages, that kind of thing, and business generally. So got bored of journalism. It pays absolutely nothing. Sort of had kids and decided I needed to make some money. So left and set up my own PR agency with one client, an estate agency in London. And basically grew it. I don't know how, but I had no idea what I was doing. But I sort of knew the way the media worked. So I took this estate agent, and actually Andrew Montlake of Corico, he was my second client. So I've known Monty, who's the chairman of the AMI, for donkey's years. So I started working with Monty in 2005, and basically turned him into the sort of media machine he is these days. He's always on bloody Martin Lewis, telly programs and whatever. So he was actually my second client. But I started just, I just found PR easy, because I think if you've been a journalist, you understand what journalists want and how the news works. Therefore, going across and becoming a PR, it's effectively news in reverse. That's what I say. If you understand the way news works, it's pretty easy. Then the global financial crisis hit, and that was a shitstorm, but somehow managed to make it through. And then we got to the pandemic, obviously after Brexit. And that's when the idea for NewsPage came, because for donkey's years, I was bored and probably drunk, during the first lockdown, because there was nothing else to do really apart from drink and smoke and things
start
like
businesses.
that, and start businesses. But I thought there's a lot of businesses out there right now that have got, that I knew were in really brutal positions, which weren't getting any government support, which were sort of, folding overnight. And I just thought, what, I'm just going to create a platform that will enable, these businesses to have their stories told in the media for free. Because, all of these stories were, I don't know, and it wasn't initially, it was called something, it was actually called the Great British Bounce Back. So we had this really clunky sort of website built, with sort of glue and hamster wheels and, bottles of fairy liquid on some, I don't know, on Squarespace or whatever. It was pretty dire. But it enabled us to sort of, it enabled people to sort of add a section about how they were struggling and how the pandemic had hit them. And then subject to the quality, we would then send it on to journalists and basically get them profiled. What struck me from that, and we weren't charging them, this was all done for free. What struck me is that when you get someone media coverage for free, they share the absolute arse of it and they love you long time. So, that for me is kind of the sort of, that was the sort of Vicky the Viking moment. I'm showing my age there. You have to be 50 plus to understand
Sorry, that one's over the head, Dominic.
Yeah. But it's kind of like what? There's something in this. And I spoke to my business partners in my other agency. So I still own another PR agency, which I won't name, but it's a very established PR agency with big sort of blue chip clients. And none of them really got it. They didn't understand why you would want to give something away for free when you could charge £2,000 a day.
Wow.
But for me, I've always been slightly, I don't know, whatever. So yeah, I just decided, there's something in this. I'm just gonna, see how it goes. And it just sort of grew and grew, and we got more and more people signing up. We rebranded to NewsPage very quickly, and we built a bespoke platform, which is still pretty clunky. We've got a mobile app coming before Christmas, which hopefully is going to, really up the ante. But it's just been really rewarding. I mean, my main point, initially it started off as a platform that would just give everyone the chance to have their story told about the shitstorm of the pandemic. That's what it started off as. And then we basically evolved. And I thought, what? This works. Let's see if we can, maybe, NewsPage will always be free. So we will never make it, non-free. So you can always be on NewsPage, never pay us a penny. I think that's really important. That's part of our philosophy. But, we thought, look, we have to make some money out of it. So we started charging a sort of monthly subscription fee and this, that, and the other. But still very accessible so that everyday businesses could afford, something that everyday businesses can afford. It's 50 quid a month, ink VAT. So basically a tenner a week, which is a glass of unoaked Chardonnay. And for that, you get the chance to, appear in the Times, Telegraph, the Mail, on Sky News, So it's just, it's very rewarding. I have a tear in my eye, but it's great, to take someone who's never been, in their local newspaper before, and then they respond to a news alert, and then 25 minutes later, they're in the Financial Times. And it's just, I find it really,
I had it. I used NewsPage a couple of months ago now, and I'd written something about Augustitis that I think Alex Curtis
that was
from
a
the
good
Lead
line,
Engine came up with. That
Yeah.
wasn't mine. That was
that was
Alex
him.
Curtis.
Yeah,
I'm
I
not
like
taking.
that. Yeah.
Like that.
Did you piggyback on his?
Yeah, of course I did. Anything Alex does, I just jump on the back. No. So Alex had done this article, and then I'd written my thoughts on it, and it was featured in an article. And I was like, this is great. I put that comment up this morning, and it was in there, and it's just a bit of pride that I can say, look, you've been featured.
And we can generate, that is a perfect trade story. That story is never going to make it, into a national newspaper because it's B2B, it's talking about brokers and, a quiet month. But, it's a perfect trade story, and those kinds of things, the trade media, if you're creating stories about social media trends you're seeing among brokers, that's a way for you to generate, news coverage, and it's interesting. If you're a mortgage trade, that should be content that you're going to run because it's
Yeah.
relevant and interesting to brokers. You know, what are brokers doing? You know, I mean, I've seen some outrageous stuff from brokers on TikTok, I won't mention, which I just find absolutely brilliant. But it's, you know, completely
Appeals
off the
to different
wall.
audiences.
Yeah.
That's all it is. So without going into the social media side of things, because that's my market and the mortgage brokers are here to hear about you guys. So talk us through a few of the successes of some clients. And I'm talking the big success where they've maybe got featured in a few articles.
Yeah,
and then
so
gone on to news.
I mean, he's God. I don't really want to mention him because he's got such a gigantic ego. But Riz Malik,
such a nice guy. I've seen him on LinkedIn. He's not. I think Dominic's having a bit of fun here, but
head in. He WhatsApps me very late at night. But anyway, he was almost one of our greatest successes. You know, I think he joined NewsPage in early September last year, and then about 10 days later, the mini budget happened. Blah blah blah. And he started. I don't know what happened, but within a week or two, obviously Kwasi had resigned because the markets had completely, you know, gone doolally. But the thing is, we got Riz. I sent out a comment from Riz, and I think he got some, you know, he was saying this mini budget's been a disaster and mortgage rates were going through the roof at the time. And I think he got into the Daily Mail or the Telegraph or somewhere else like that. And, you know, on the back of that, Sky News contacted us and said, oh, we like this guy's comments are pretty sharp, you know, pretty edgy. Let's get him on. And the next day, Riz was on TV calling for Kwasi Kwarteng to resign on live Sky News at like 1 o'clock, and then the next day he did fucking resign. So you know,
just because of Riz, he's like, oh, Riz said it, I'm off.
Riz takes obviously, he's the
But that just shows all it takes is one comment on an article for a journalist to see it and go, right, let's jump on this bloke, get him on,
and that's how it works.
The news.
And we get that all the time. I mean, we get a lot of journalists will go to our users directly now, and we're absolutely fine with that because you know what, we've done our bit, and you know, a lot of the time, you know, it's not hard to find the name and number of a broker. You know, if you've seen them in the Daily Mail, you can find their website, give them a call direct, and we get a lot of that. You know, so I think Lewis Shaw was on radio this morning. He's another sort of, you know, long in the tooth. I think he was on radio, was it this morning or yesterday morning? But he's been on radio 3 or 4 times over the past since the Bank of England rate decision last week. So, you know, that happens. The more, you know, you get coverage, and then journalists will start sort of coming to you direct. But we're cool with that. You know, we've done our job,
and that's the reason I wanted you to tell those stories, because although it starts on NewsPage, so Riz would have logged in the morning, seen the news alert about the mini budget going crazy, put a comment on that news alert saying absolute turmoil, it's rubbish, the Kwasi needs to go, etc., etc. That would have been featured in the Daily Mail, and then what would have happened is then a journalist would have picked up his article and got him on TV. That's how it. That's a simplified.
That's pretty much how it's worked. Yeah.
Those are like big success stories, but talk to us about how it can help mortgage brokers in a local sense, because I find this really interesting.
Yeah, well, do you know what? I do harp on about this when I have brokers sometimes arrange news chats with me and I talk to them about this. But, you know, local Justin Moy, I don't know whether he's one of your clients.
No, I recognise his name.
EHF Mortgages, but I know that we've had him on local radio in Kent. I think he's based in, do you know what, I can't even remember. But I remember he was on a chat saying that he's had so many leads from, you know, being on local radio and in local newspapers. And that's a real focus for us. So if you're a broker based in Manchester, or if you're, you know, when you respond to a news alert, your comment won't just go to national news desks and trade media. It will also, for a big story, go to, you know, the Manchester Evening News and local newspapers, because they're the ones that are most likely to get the phone ringing for you. So it's a real big sort of priority for us. You know, we speak to brokers a lot, and, you know, getting into the local newspaper, or the local website, whether, I'm in Bath, that would be Somerset Online or whatever it's called, can be invaluable for leads. Yes, if you get into the Financial Times, that's great for kudos and, brand and bragging rights. But the phone is far more likely to ring if you're in your local newspaper or if you're in your local radio station talking about how homeowners can cope with rising rates, because that's your demographic. You're right there in that market. So, it's a big focus for us. So we've got countless examples of, news pages in whether it's the Bristol Post, the Grimsby whatever Telegraph, the Derby Telegraph. We get brokers. I've had Lewis Shaw, probably readership of about 1 in the Chad News or something, I don't know, it's probably got about 9 readers, but whatever, he was in it, and
local.
So he was happy so that's a big focus for us. I think national's great, but actually the real value is in the sort of, these local publications, because obviously national media outlets, it's very competitive. You have a lot of PR companies who are paying, a lot of brands, big mortgage companies pay big PR agencies lots of money to get them into the news all the time. So, it's very competitive, but we do, exceptionally well anyway. But, the long tail of all these local media outlets is often the area where brokers can get the most value, because it does result in, inquiries and inbound calls. And that's ultimately what PR is all about. It's about trust. It's about generating trust, because if people Google you and, they Google, Lewis Shaw, mortgage broker, instantly on page 1 of Google, you're going to see him quoted in articles on the BBC and in the Daily Mail and the Telegraph. And that creates instant credibility and trust, because people think, quite rightly, that if this guy's quoted here, he must be he must know his onions.
It's the trust, that trust building side of it.
Yeah.
And with the local newspapers, I think if you're featured in an article, it's a great article to be sharing on your social media channels, because the majority of your audience are going to be local, and they're going to know that it's the Birmingham Mail. So
exactly. And I always say that PR is the starting point, and I think this is where you come in. We need to educate our users more on the fact that just getting into the FT, that's not the end. It's really the beginning, because you then need to wring that dry and get as much
out of it as possible.
Get out of it as possible, by sharing it on social media, by emailing your clients and whatever, just saying, look, we featured in the FT. It's all great stuff. And I do say to users, get these, mention it on the homepage as featured in the Telegraph, the Daily Mail. Now, technically, you shouldn't use their logos because it's a breach of copyright, but you can certainly put as featured in the Times and link to the article that you were in, or the Independent 100%. Or the Telegraph, and that's
what I would say invaluable. Is this might be a bit of a tip for people. If you get featured in an article, whether it's through NewsPage or not, these are the things I would do. As soon as I was featured, I'd make sure that there was a blog post on my website saying that I've now been featured in the Times talking about this subject. That'd be my first thing. I'd then upload an Instagram story with me talking, saying I've just been featured, with a link to the article or a link to your website where the article's held. Then I'd do a LinkedIn post, and then I'd do an email shot saying that we've been featured. Then on Facebook, I'd do a post saying we've been featured, and I'd go and share it into your 20 local groups. And that way you'll hit all your audience off one article feature.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I would do.
Yeah, exactly. And actually we are, I hate the word roadmap, but it is in our roadmap to help, so that when people, because effectively the hard work's been done. When you respond to a news alert, you've created content that is basically relevant to the news cycle, because almost all of our news alerts are about stories that are happening now. So you've created, by spending 5 minutes to sort of write that newsletter response, you've got the content then, which can be used to, and if you're a premium user, we will edit that content so that it reads well, and we'll finesse it. So that's one of the value, probably the main value of being premium.
2 things I'd say about that is, the first thing, if you've taken the time to respond to a news alert, use that as a social media post. There's nothing
Yeah,
stopping you from
exactly.
jumping and putting it on
No,
as a post.
we haven't, we don't say you can't use that, and the media
Yeah.
don't care. I mean, because use it, fire away. You've already just spent 5 or 10 minutes of your life just writing something. Now go and share
Go and
that
use
and
it.
do whatever, use it.
And then the second thing, you edit, which is fantastic for the premium users. But say if there was somebody using the free content, have you got a few tips for people on how to write a really engaging piece?
I mean, it's the same. You've got to be succinct and to the point. And as I said earlier, you've got to be sort of outspoken. Journalists don't like people who sit on the fence. The more outspoken you are, the more journalists will like you, and the more likely you're going to be picked up. Journalists, that's how the news works. So I've got, I'm not going to name any names, but we've got a number of brokers you've been harping on about prices dropping by 35% over the next, 2 years, and whether they believe that or not, I'm not entirely sure.
And
but
maybe it's just a bit fictitious.
They've worked out that the Daily Mail, certain titles, they love all that stuff. It's doom and gloom. That's what sells, newspapers. So, but it's about you've got to, you've got to be succinct and straight to the point. We've stopped people writing essays anyways. We've limited the amount of characters per news alert response because we had people writing fast, tomes of, just like War and Peace, just for one simple sort of journalist request. So, be succinct, get straight to the point, try and write in sound bites, because often journalists will just use one line from you. They're not going to, they may just write. So each sentence almost should be a standalone sentence. So that because journalists will, often in an article, a journalist will quote 4 or 5 mortgage brokers. So they're never going to probably quote all, everything that you've written. They'll just take the best line. So it's really quality, not quantity. One killer line can get you on the front page, can get you onto the front page of the Evening Standard. And if that killer line is, outspoken, or it's, we've got some people who become dab hands. They see what happens. It's a learning curve because when you're premium, we edit your responses and you get an email saying, look, your response has been edited. Go and check it out to make sure you're happy. And you'll see what we've done. So next time you respond, you'll be having that in your head thinking, okay, I can see what they did last time. They were slightly, they did this and did that. And we find our users sort of learn very quickly and start really getting how the media works. They really start understanding what, the difference between a quote that won't fly and one that will. But that, it just comes from being on the platform.
So consistently writing, and with the premium version, Dominic and his team will jump in and make edits. Well, Dominic, I think we've covered quite a lot here, especially some tips on how to do it and where your guys are featured. Fantastic. Where can people sign up, or can they email you directly, get in touch? Where's the best place?
I mean, just message me on LinkedIn. I mean, the website is, NewsPage.co.uk or NewsPage.media. They both work. I mean, the .media is our sort of, our main URL, but it doesn't take long. Sign up. I mean, what I would say is sometimes we've had people who sign up, and if it doesn't work the first time, they're kind of like, well, that didn't work, what load of old nonsense. And we can't, we can't control the media. We will almost certainly, if you're a mortgage broker, there's no doubt that we will get you into the media. It may be that the first time you don't get in because your quote wasn't that strong or whatever. So I do say try and, just give it a week or two. But, we do go out of our way to prioritize new users and sort of, get them into because, we want to,
you want success from people. It's the same as social media. You can't just put one social media post and expect people to return.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I think we have had some people, they sign up and they use it once and it doesn't work and they never use it again, or they use it once every month. But journalists are quite, they also quite like, quoting. If people are quoting regularly, it builds trust with journalists, and journalists are more likely to quote you and blah, blah, blah. But, so I would say, try and be patient. Almost certainly, if you're a mortgage broker, within 2 weeks of you joining, we will have had you media coverage, almost certain. If that doesn't happen, I'll eat my hat.
There you go. That's fantastic. Great. And we like to donate £10 to a charity of your choice to say thank you for coming on. Which charity do you want us to make the donation?
Macmillan Cancer Charity, please.
Yep.
Cancer research, yeah. So, brokers, give it a go, and, we can, whenever you sign up, we get alerted so we can see if you're a new broker that you've just joined, and we'll look after you, as we've done, I think, with a lot of your clients, Chris. We go out of our way to sort of get them where they want to be, so.
They all rave about it. So go and check it out. Go and check out the website, and go and message Dominic on LinkedIn if you want to get involved.
Contact me on LinkedIn. And the mobile app, I think it's going to be, just to finish on that's going to be coming very soon. And it's going to be a much more robust mobile environment for people to respond to. And, I've said, I want somebody to be able to receive a news alert when they get on the train in Guildford, respond by the time they get to Woking, and by the time they get to Waterloo, they're in the Daily Mail. And you're going to be able to respond via video and audio as well.
Oh,
so you're
awesome.
So, journalists are going to be able to basically embed videos of you saying, giving your views on X, Y, and Z, and then just embed that straight into the news. So that's all coming with the mobile app before Christmas.
Very interesting.
Or
it'd be interesting to see the size
all of this here. Yeah.
The rest of it.
Yeah. So the rest of it is, it's clinging on for dear life. Anyway, I better go. It's nearly cigar time.
But check out Dominic's LinkedIn. You'll see plenty of cigar photos. But Dominic, thank you so much for coming on.
No
really
worries,
appreciate
Chris.
it.
Really good to talk. And obviously, lastly, thank you for sponsoring, because you're, hopefully they're going well. You're a sponsor of our news alert. So
yeah, definitely. A lot of people have messaged us to say that we're on the email. So if you sign up to NewsPage, you'll see our alerts. We've sponsored some of the emails, and it's going really well. People are noticing us, which is fab.
Good, brilliant. Okay, mate, good to talk.
Thank you very much, Dominic. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.